Is Donald Trump setting up a Reichstag fire of his own? Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Welcome back. So the NRA and the John Birch Society and all these guys, I remember when I was like 12. My dad took me to a John Birch Society. He was a Republican. He was very active with the Republicans. He thought they were nuts. I'm not sure he'd been to one of these meetings before. It was hosted by a neighbor of ours, a guy who lived down the street. And, they gave me a copy of John Stormer's book, None Dare Call It Treason. I took it home. I read it. I was freaked out. The State Department was infiltrated with communists. Oh, my God. But back then, the right-wingers at least were saying what we're concerned about is that someday the police powers of this country may be used against its own citizens. Now, of course, they thought they were going to be used against them, which is, at that time, at least where I was, suburban white men, by and large, at that John Birch Society meeting. The NRA been saying the same thing. They've sold millions and millions of guns. Look out, the government is going to come for you. Government thugs are going to come for you. Government jackbooted thugs, in fact, are going to come for you. I mean, but where are they? Oh, if the government's going after liberals, then that's fine. You guys on the right who are concerned about police power, police power is pretty awesome power. Only the police, only the government basically has the power to take away your freedom, to put you in prison, or to take away your life, to execute you. Legally. If I try to confine you, that's called kidnapping. If I try to kill you, or if I do kill you, that's called murder. But when the government does it, it's under color of law, it is considered, legal jailing and lawful execution. And we should be concerned about that. So how has this played out in the past? Well, I've shared this with you before, but it's, it seems at least once a year we need to revisit Milton Mayer. In the late 1940s, early 1950s, somewhere in that time period, I'm not sure the year, Milton Mayer, who was a reporter for, as I recall, the Chicago Sun, one of the big Chicago newspapers, went to Germany after World War II as the country was rebuilding, and spent a year there and met with and got to know and hung out with and extensively interviewed 10 Germans who had not been in the army, they had not fought in the war, they had not joined the Nazi Party, they had all managed to just basically keep their jobs and keep working through the war. And his question to each one of them was, what the hell happened here? And the book, he published this book. It's called They Thought They Were Free. It's still in print. Milton Mayer's long gone. He passed away years ago. But what these Germans told him is worth revisiting. He was talking with a bricklayer. This guy said, this separation of government from the people, this widening of the gap, took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure or associated with true patriotic allegiance or with real social purposes. And all these crises and reforms, and there were real reforms too, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath of the whole process of government growing remoter and remoter. To live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it. Please try to believe me, unless one has a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity, than most of us ever had the occasion to develop. And by the way, go back and look at some of the things that I was writing when George W. Bush was pushing the Patriot Act and all of these this massive concentration of police power and the Department of Homeland Security, homeland being a word that has genetic roots. It's a word that was used by the Nazis. We are the homeland to the German people, which are the white people, right? And then George W. Bush pulls this word homeland out, which has never been used to describe America. We are not a genetic homeland. Unless you're Native American, you shouldn't be using the word homeland. But anyhow, back to Milton Mayer's book, the fellow he interviewed. He said, each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained, or on occasion regretted, that unless you were detached from the whole process from the beginning, unless one understood what the whole thing was in principle, what all these little measures that no patriotic German could resent must someday lead to, one no more saw it developing day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. And one day it's over his head. He talked to a college professor who continued to teach college all through everything. And the guy said, Pastor Niemöller spoke for the thousands and thousands of men like me when he spoke too modestly of himself and said that when the Nazis attacked the communists, he was a little uneasy, but after all, he was not a communist, so he didn't do anything. Then they attacked the socialists. He was a little more uneasy, but he wasn't a socialist, and so he didn't do anything. And then the schools, the press, the Jews, and so on. And he was always uneasier, but still he did nothing. And then they attacked the church, and he was a churchman. And he tried to do something, but then it was too late. Niemöller, by the way, his great poem, I believe, was found in a concentration camp. I may be wrong on that, but anyhow. You see, the college professor says, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for the one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act or even talk alone. You don't want to go out of your way to make trouble. Why not? Well, you're not in the habit of doing it. And it's not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It is also genuine uncertainty. Uncertainty is a very important factor, and instead of decreasing as time goes on, it grows. Outside in the streets, in the general community, everyone seems happy. One hears no protest, certainly sees none. You know, in France or Italy, there's slogans against the government painted on walls and fences, but in Germany, outside the great cities maybe, you don't even have this. In the university community, in your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom feel as you do, certainly. But what do they say? Oh, it's not so bad. You're seeing things. You're an alarmist. And you are an alarmist. You're saying that this must lead to that, but you can't prove it. These are the beginnings, yes, but how do you know for sure when you don't know the end? How do you know or even surmise how this will end? On the one hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, the party, they intimidate you. On the other hand, your colleagues poo-poo you as pessimistic or even neurotic. But that one great shocking occasion where tens or hundreds of thousands will join you never comes. That's the difficulty. If the last and worst act of the whole regime had come immediately after the first and smallest, thousands, millions would have been sufficiently shocked if, let us say, the gassing of the Jews in 1943 had come immediately after the German firm stickers in store windows, in the windows of non-Jewish shops in 1933. But of course, this isn't the way it happens. In between come all the hundreds of tiny steps, some of them imperceptible, each of them preparing you not to be shocked by the next. Step C isn't so much worse than step B. And if you didn't take a stand at B, why should you at step C? And then on to step D. And then one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy. And some minor incident, in my case, it was my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying Jews, swine, collapses it all at once. And you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world you were in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, reassuring, the houses, the shops, the cinema, but the spirit has changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves.